So here we are, at long last, after having reviewed all the previous Disney movies, having reviewed the 6 movies that would follow after this one, and the 2 new releases that came out this year. After this is done, I will have officially reviewed all 60 Disney animated movies. Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. This is my review for Wreck-It Ralph, which came out in 2012, is Disney's 52nd animated movie, and is the feature film debut of Rich Moore, who prior to this had worked on The Simpsons, The Critic, Futurama, and he would also be the co-director for another big Disney hit, Zootopia. This movie was also co-written by Jennifer Lee. This is the first Disney movie that she's worked on, and she's currently the current chief creative officer of Disney Animation. This movie has a concept in a way where you cross Toy Story with Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It takes place in an arcade where all these video game characters are actually alive. They can game hop to each other when the arcade is closed. There's this central hub where they all commute from one game to another. The main character is Ralph, voiced by John C. Reilly. He's the villain of an old 80s arcade game called Fix-It Felix Jr., which is essentially Donkey Kong, and he has been doing this for 30 years. At a certain point, he's just gotten tired of it. He has a midlife crisis and doesn't want to be seen as a bad guy anymore, because all the townspeople within the game treat him like garbage. I mean, granted, Ralph does live in garbage, but they look down on him, they're afraid of him. Felix seems to be okay with Ralph, but Ralph just can't take it anymore. So one day he decides to hop into hero's duty to prove to everyone in that penthouse that, yeah, I can be a good guy, I can win a medal. But unfortunately, things don't go as planned, and Ralph ends up in another arcade game, Sugar Rush, which is very similar to Mario Kart. Hero's Duty was pretty much one of those first-person rail shooters. So in Sugar Rush, he meets Vanellope von Schweetz, who is a glitch in the game, but she wants to try to win a race. So in exchange for getting his medal back, Ralph agrees to help Vanellope von Schweetz win this race, but Ralph himself also has to get back to his game before the plug is pulled and everyone in that game is homeless. Which, considering that all the people who live in that penthouse are a bunch of pricks, I don't really care about them. So like I said before, this movie came out in 2012, nearly 10 years ago. Jeez. That was actually a pretty awesome year for me personally, and for movies, because, I mean, stuff like Argo, Skyfall, The Avengers, Cabin in the Woods. There was a lot of really good movies that came out, and one unique distinction about 2012 was that this was the year that Pixar made a Disney movie with Brave, and Disney made a Pixar movie with Wreck-It Ralph. Now, earlier this year, when I reviewed Chicken Little, Meet the Robinsons, and Walt, I mentioned that those movies were Disney trying to find their voice when it came to 3D animation, because they were still kind of pulling from Pixar, right? Like, they just didn't feel distinct enough. This is kind of like if they did that right. They finally nailed the aesthetic of how their 3D animated movies look, but the concept is very much a Pixar concept. Like I mentioned, it's essentially Toy Story. What do these video game characters do after the arcades close? And similar to how Toy Story gave me this mentality of all my old, toys would just do stuff while I was away, I now look at the extension cord that my Switch and PS4 plugged into and go, do all these video game characters just meet in this hub? Like, is Mario hanging out with Trevor Phillips from GTA 5? Boy, that would be a movie right there. But speaking of Mario, he doesn't appear in this movie. He's name-dropped, but you get to see a lot of other iconic video game characters here, and they're basically cameos. You have Ryu and Ken from Street Fighter, you have Sonic the Hedgehog, you have Dr. Eggman, you have Bowser, M. Bison, Zangief, the zombie from House of the Dead, Q*bert. There's a lot of iconic video game characters here, mostly from the 80s and 90s, but still, it's like Roger Rabbit in that sense. But unlike Roger Rabbit, there aren't any scenes that are dedicated to some of these iconic video game characters. Like the two ducks playing piano next to each other, or Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny skydiving. You don't get a scene like that in this movie. Most of the time you spend with these video game characters being themselves are more like visual gags. Like when Bowser spits fireballs and you hear the Super Nintendo sound effect when he does it. When one of the ghosts from Pac-Man turns blue when he's afraid. When Ralph is in a spaceship losing control from Hero's Duty and going into Sugar Rush, it hits Sonic and rings fly out of him. And again, it's very quick, and in Sonic's case, it's in the background. So it's cool to see that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, once we get to Sugar Rush, it shifts its focus away from video game references to a bunch of candy and sweets puns. You have two officers that are named Wenchels and Duncan, because, you know, Wenchels and Dunkin' Donuts. You have a bunch of soldiers for King Candy going, Oreo, Oreo, and they're Oreos. Like, it gets to a certain point where it's just pun overload. I'm like, stop it, please. This is too much. And I just don't think it's as clever as with all the video game references before that. But, you know, that's not too big of an issue because the movie is still very enjoyable. I actually reviewed this back when it came out in theaters on my original YouTube channel, and I liked it quite a bit, and I still like it just as much as I did back then. Because the characters are charming, and the voice talent they have is very good. John C. Reilly voices Wreck-It Ralph, and I like how his character is supposed to be the villain of his arcade game, but he has to learn throughout the movie that, well, as Zangief puts it, he might be a bad guy, but that doesn't make him a bad guy. And I feel like that's an inspiring message. And again, from both ends. From Ralph's end, just because you're given a label doesn't mean you really have to be that. And it goes for the people looking at Ralph as a bad guy. Like, just don't judge a book by its cover. And plus, John C. Reilly's voice just fits the way Ralph is designed. He's got this fuzzy hair, these giant Donkey Kong type hands. He's a very entertaining character. Sarah Silverman voices Vanellope von Schweetz, and Sarah Silverman, for me in general, is kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes she's really funny, but other times I feel like she can be very annoying. And here we kind of get a mix of both. Vanellope von Schweetz is often annoying, especially when you first meet her, but she's got her funny moments, and she's definitely sarcastic, which might be the reason why they even hired Sarah Silverman to voice this character. And then Jack McBrayer is Fix-It Felix Jr., and Jane Lynch is the sergeant from Hero's Duty. They both fulfill their roles, but don't really do a whole lot. One of the big scene stealers in this movie is Alan Tudyk. Alan Tudyk plays King Candy, who is the supposed leader of Sugar Rush, and he's having a lot of fun, mainly because he's pretty much doing Ed Wynn's performance as the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland. I mean, if you put these two characters side to side, it's the exact same character, essentially. Although I will say, King Candy was the start of Disney's brief obsession of the twist villain. I know when I reviewed Atlantis: The Lost Empire, some people have pointed out that that was the beginning, but Disney never really followed up on it, and they never did it as consistently as they did starting with Wreck-It Ralph. And I will say, Wreck-It Ralph does it better than other Disney movies that would follow, mainly because you kind of get the idea that King Candy is a villain, but the twist that they give him, where he's actually a main character from another arcade game, that's pretty clever. So it's like, oh, a villain within a villain. So it's not like they paint King Candy as a good guy at all, and the twist doesn't seem as eye-rolly as something like with Frozen or Big Hero 6 or even Zootopia. As much as I really like those movies, especially Zootopia, after a while, that twist got really tiresome. Overall, Wreck-It Ralph is very enjoyable. It's not one of my favorite Disney movies. It might be in my top 30 if I were to rank all the Disney movies. Because I think in the second half, when it starts being obsessed with candy puns, that's when the movie gets less clever in terms of its humor. But once Ralph starts helping Vanellope learn how to drive and the two of them become friends, that's when the movie starts to pick up again, and at the end of the day, I'd say worth seeing in your lifetime. I think that was the same rating that I gave it when I reviewed the movie back in 2012, but I can certainly say that this is a lot better than the sequel, which, it's still got some good moments, but that sequel just doesn't really hold a candle to this one. In my opinion, I think this should have won Best Animated Feature over Brave, but you know, almost 10 years later, what can you do? A really fun movie, another great addition to Disney's revival era, and a great way to end me talking about every Disney animated movie. And there you go, that's my review for Wreck-It Ralph, and I am done. I am finally done talking about every Disney animated movie out there. And for those of you who are new to the channel, I've already reviewed Frozen, Big Hero 6, Zootopia, Moana, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and Frozen 2 when they were released in theaters. So I've already reviewed those movies, and then again, this year with Raya, the Last Dragon, and Encanto, I reviewed those two, and yeah, all 60 Disney movies are done. This was a really tiresome, exhausting, but at the same time very fun and insightful project that I worked on. Going through all these Disney movies throughout history in the order they came out is like watching all the Godzilla movies in order. It's just so fascinating to see how this company has evolved, where they started, seeing their highs, their lows, and seeing the stuff that I never got to watch before. Seeing movies like The Rescuers, Rescuers Down Under, The Fox and the Hound, and The Black Cauldron for the first time were very interesting. Even if I didn't like something like The Black Cauldron, I'm still very happy I saw it. So now, going into 2022, I'm going to be slowing things down with retro movie reviews. I'm going to start focusing on newer releases, maybe some TV shows. I might go to Disneyland now that I actually have a Disneyland shirt, because I've never once been to Disneyland since I purchased this thing. And yeah, looking forward to the next year. I know 2021 has still relatively been a rough year. Better than last year, in my opinion, but I know it's probably been a lot. Whether you're still recovering physically or mentally from last year, or whether you're just trying to readjust getting back into your regular way of life. I know that's what I've been going through this year, so thank you guys for watching all these videos. If you missed any of them, I have a whole playlist of these reviews, so you can go check it out right there. Once again, thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for my best of and worst of list for 2021. And I also want to know what you guys think about Wreck-It Ralph. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one. Hello everyone, I just wanted to say thank you all for watching my review for Wreck-It Ralph. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, go check out my Twitch channel, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day, take care of yourselves, and see you in 2022.